When thinking about being on Instagram, if you have a business to business company, are your people on there? I mean, it always goes back to your buyer personas, but I want you to think more broadly about your buyer persona, right? So your prospective talent pool is very likely on Instagram. And so you can expand that persona strategy to talent personas and who are you trying to attract. If there's anybody that's working with investors or has other types of stakeholders, showing the truth about your company, about your culture, about what matters behind just what you sell can be incredibly beneficial to your brand, to your valuation, to your ability to connect with the people that will help make you successful. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Marketing Blender Show. I'm Dacia Coffee, and today, again, we are joined as my special co-host by Samaria Boyd, social media extraordinaire in B2B marketing.
That's me.
I love it. So today, we are talking about B2B marketing on Instagram. So I'm wondering right off the top of my head if people think, oh, Instagram's not really for business to business companies.
I think just in general, I think a lot of people don't think of it as a place for B2B marketing. And I think that's just really apparent because a lot of our clients don't have Instagram.
Yeah.
Or if they do have Instagram, they haven't touched it in like 6 years or something of the sort.
Can't find their password.
That too. They're like, oh man, we had a social media manager like 5 years ago who started the Instagram and we just never used it. So we just never asked for the password. So now they're having to hunt that down. But I think a lot of people have the misconception that Instagram is really only for B2C and obviously personal use.
Yeah.
And I think that is completely incorrect because you also have something to show too. So,
yeah. I agree. Like when I think about my personal usage of Instagram, I have a very healthy number of business influencers I'm following, of motivational things, but they are all surrounding my business point of view. Mm-hmm. It's not just friends and family. It's not just vacation posts or fashion or whatever my fun stuff is. Mm-hmm. I really find that I have a tendency to follow anything in my overall scope. I don't segment Instagram anymore to, oh, this is just for fun, or it has nothing to do with my professional life, And so I think there's probably a lot of influencers or, executives, leaders, business decisions on there that are the same. Do you think there's like specific industries that's more true for, or what have you experienced?
I think as long as you have something that is slightly visual, really even if it's not necessarily pertaining to your business, and you have something like your people, you guys go and you do community service here. Like there's certain, I think, aspects of everyone's business, of every company, that can be showcased on Instagram.
Yep.
And I don't think that it has to be, it doesn't have to be all infographics and graphics. It can be your people. It can be the other things that you have to showcase. Like I said, video of you going and doing Habitat for Humanity, something of the sort. I'm not really sure if there's a specific industry. Well, I'll say I think the only industry that would probably have a problem on Instagram, it would be anything dealing with surgery, like anything that's like a little bit graphic, and showing the blood and gore of it all. Like I think those are the only places that you'll probably have a little trouble. But there's still an audience for that on Instagram because clearly I see a lot of it all the time. I do like to watch. We have a client, Root Periodontal and Implants, so now my entire timeline has shifted over into dental procedures. It's kind of interesting. So I enjoy watching that kind of stuff too. And so I see it all the time. And it's just like, sometimes they flag it, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But that would be the only industry I think that would probably have a slight issue.
I think it, and they've got to be careful depending on what environment they're in, about what's healthy to, but we do have Panhandle plastic surgery and Instagram is wildly effective for them, but that is a little bit more boost in a consumer. So, okay. So when we're thinking about Instagram, what are some of the major ways? Like you already mentioned, communicating culture on Instagram is a really great application, for Instagram and what to show. Of course, product or service, people engaging with what you do. What are some of the others, like best types of content that you like putting on Instagram?
I think the best types of content that I like to put on Instagram would be the, how do I say it? Humans helping humans.
Yeah.
Showing that there's still some good in the world and in every company.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important anyways for companies to showcase that they actually care, especially in the era that we're in now, of people wanting to feel more connected to the brands and the people that they work with or who work for them.
Yep.
So that's my favorite, like absolute all-time favorite type of content to get from clients is like, okay, you guys, we did a 5K for insert cause, like here are pictures, or the Habitat for Humanity thing is really one of my favorites because you get to see people actually working together.
Yeah.
And you get to see just kind of like, I don't know, it gives you a more human side. So that's my favorite kind of content. And I think that's probably for B2B companies super important to post because most of the time you're not necessarily communicating directly to the consumer, so they don't really get to know you. And 9 times out of 10, the people who are looking at your content are probably people who either want to work for you or want to work with you.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. So when thinking about being on Instagram, if you have a business to business company, are your people on there? I mean, it always goes back to your buyer personas, but I want you to think more broadly about your buyer persona, right? So there are the people that you sell to, and maybe you have a specific category of buyer that is Instagram or is not. And so you want to customize your content to that. But Samaria made a great point that your prospective talent pool is very likely on Instagram. And so you can expand that persona strategy to talent personas and who are you trying to attract. If there's anybody that's working with investors or has other types of stakeholders that are really important, maybe you're really engaged with the community, as she said, and making sure that you have that positive brand impression, showing the truth about your company, about your culture, about what matters behind just what you sell can be incredibly beneficial to your brand, to your valuation, to your ability to connect with the people that will help make you successful. So it always goes back to, are your personas on Instagram? And if they are, then you should be there as well.
Right.
Okay, so connecting the kind of content that people want to see, the heart, I agree, being good is good for business. Mm-hmm. And so showcasing that. But let's get a little more tactical. Are there certain formats, like should they post? Should they do stories? Should it be reels? Should it be video? Like, how do you navigate all the different types of content on Instagram?
Well, my answer is just yes. No, just kidding. But I think that it's important to have a good mix of content on Instagram, mostly because it has been said, and I think it's true, that the more you utilize every feature that is available on Instagram, the more you may pop up on the explore page.
Yeah.
Because I think that they just like to see that you're using their I guess so to speak, their product basically.
Yeah, totally.
And their platform. So I think right now for a lot of people, I think the most beneficial, if you're not able to do everything, is going to be utilizing your reels and also repurposing your stories into reels.
Okay.
That's a feature. But yeah, regular posting is always great. And then they're constantly changing the way that they do things. And it's really interesting because not everybody's getting the features, right? Yeah. So for one client, we have like where if we post a video as a regular post, instead of it, when you share it to the story, instead of it just being like the little square, it's now like that little round, like rectangle kind of like movie aspect kind of video. And that's pretty cool because you can change the background behind those things. And that's another thing is, utilizing stories now, it's kind of like they're integrating more design into their platform, and you're being able to like design those stories more and make them look a little bit more appealing to the eye. So I definitely think stories are really important now because not only can you capture quick things, but you can make them look cute, you can make them look fun, put the music behind them, royalty free for most people, but if you are, depending on your industry, you can use, the Beyoncés, the Taylor Swifts and things like that. So, but I think stories, reels, and obviously regular posts are going to be the most important things.
So is there best type of content for each one? Or, do you think, okay, well, it should be this kind of content if it's a post, or you should take a different approach if it's a reel versus a story, anything like that?
I think, in my personal opinion, because I know not everybody's going to agree with this, I think your stories should be more of the real-time content.
Yeah.
And I do think reels can also be real-time content, but I do love a good planned out reel. It's also, I guess, maybe because like of the background that I have in video.
Yeah.
I like to see like actual intention put behind those things. So, I also like the spontaneity of stories. Like you can be walking around. It doesn't really matter if it's completely company related or like, anything that you can kind of tie back to your audience that you can capture.
It's like a
That's
moment in
nice.
time.
Yeah.
Like this is what's happening right now or right here. Or, yeah, exactly. Whereas I love what you're saying about reels too, because I do think, well, gosh, when they're beautiful, it's hard not to watch them. And then you can build such a great narrative into such a very short format. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I think, I wonder, do you see more engagement, like around that type of approach, or does it just depend?
I think it just depends because obviously not all like fully planned out reels are going to be
Right.
hits because social media is like a weird place of like one day this kind of thing could be trending, the next day this kind of thing could be trending. But I think the reason why I like the more pretty put together reels is because, especially for B2B companies, it's an easy way to kind of tell people about yourself. Again, like, I mean, I think I've said this like several times on several different episodes. Social is the place for you to like kind of express yourself and tell people who you are.
Yeah.
Without them having to be inside your company. And I think, excuse me, when you have the more polished kind of reel, it kind of gives people a glimpse at like what your work is like,
Yeah.
and who you are and things like that. But I also do like, I will say, I don't hate the spontaneous reels. And I do like some of them because some of them do become like really funny trends or like, whatever. But I do think that the more planned out and thought out ones are typically, those are my favorite.
Yeah. So, okay. So one of your first tips then is don't just use posts. Use the full functionality available to you inside of Instagram. What else should people be doing in order to get more engagement, more followers, just more success on Instagram?
The most important thing on Instagram, I think, well, I shouldn't say most important. I think I said that like 3 times. They're important to me, but no, I think one of the things that people can be doing is engaging with other pages that may post the same thing, building out that community, because then as they see you engage more, sometimes they'll come engage with you.
Yes.
A lot of the times I think people also ignore DMs a lot that they get from people who follow them. And I think that's a really important place to interact with people because the only reason they're DMing you is because they feel like you may respond and they feel like you may care.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Don't
saying,
disappoint.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not saying that like you have to respond to all of them because some of them are spam. But I do think that if somebody's commenting, sending you a DM to ask you a question or making a comment on your story, which will come to your direct messages, take some time out, maybe just like it, throw in 3 hearts if you don't know what to say or something of the sort. But don't let those go unanswered because that also just kind of, that is just a way to kind of build with your audience and the people who are following you. And that goes for B2B and B2C. So
yeah. Do you like the DM automation, for follows and that kind of thing? What's your opinion? So there is functionality and automations that you can build that if somebody follows you or if they type in something in the chat, then you can get an automatic DM back from the company or from the influencer, whether it's with a resource, so the equivalent of a download, but in social media, or just a personal message. What's your opinion on that?
I like them in ration.
Right.
I think it depends on, because like sometimes it's annoying because you'll have an automatic message set up and somebody will be responding to something that might be a little thoughtful and it'll automatically be like, hi, thank you for reaching out. We'll have somebody contact you. And it's like, that's not the response that we needed.
Yep.
So I do think that in certain aspects it can be beneficial because it does take away the need for the immediate response from somebody on the team.
Yep.
But I do think that sometimes it's a little annoying because like I think if I were somebody DMing you or a company to ask a question about a product or a service, and then I get, or maybe I'm not DMing to ask because I think that would be the proper response. Actually, somebody will get back to you. But like if I'm DMing and saying like, oh, I love, this video, like,
It needs to be
asking.
real.
Yeah, it needs to be an actual response from somebody.
Yeah, I think my favorite are when it's an offer, because that means people are intentionally saying, yes, give me that automated message. So if somebody's got something really wonderful, a free tool, access to something, I think those can be clever as long as they're on brand and it's really catered to what the audience wants. I think those can be well done. At the Marketing Blender, we have fractional CMOs and outsourced marketing teams to drive your success. The two most common problems that we are approached about is how do we break revenue plateaus and accelerate success, or how do we attribute marketing to revenue impact? And the answer is that we build a system, because your marketing should be driving revenue, it should be driving your reputation, and it should be driving resilience. If you want to learn more, check out themarketingblender.com. What else should people be doing? I love that you're talking about engagement. I love that you're talking about reaching out to other brands, even, and talking with them. What are some other best practices?
Over on Instagram, I think another best practice would be paying attention to kind of what your feed looks like. I know sometimes it's easy because even I have this problem as long as I've been working on Instagram pages and things like that. You'll start, pumping content out and everything is fine. And then you go look at your feed and you're like, oh, maybe that's not necessarily cohesive.
Yeah,
exactly. And it kind of gives you, especially as a social media manager, a moment to kind of look at your strategy in a way over there and see kind of where you can improve. So always pay attention to what your feed is looking like as far as like your post. Also, if you want to keep your algorithm straight so that you can keep following industry things, make sure that you're interacting, again, engaging with other people who are in your industry. So,
yeah. I think another thing, and this is so specific, is around subtitles.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so they keep moving them around, and then depending on where the subtitles are, you can or cannot read them. You can or cannot engage with them. Sometimes they're distracting. Sometimes they are so additive where you're like, and especially when they get that right. And the reason I bring this up is because, what's your strategy? Is kind of zooming out. What does it look like? And there's a few of the people that I follow that are my favorites, and their subtitles are so on point and they're immediately recognizable. I like reading them if I can't be listening or something like that. And they've added it to their brand style, which I appreciate so much. So I think being thoughtful about that user experience is massively important.
Yeah, that is really important, especially for accessibility purposes.
Yeah.
That's a super huge conversation right now in social. And yeah, there are some people who are kind of being malicious with it, but there are people who actually need it. So I definitely think being inclusive in that aspect is super important on social. And it's something that I always try to do intentionally for all of our clients and ourselves. So
Agreed. And why post content that's not effective or that people can't engage with or that they're not going to enjoy? So, I mean, that thoughtfulness is so, so important. So flipping this around a little bit, those are a lot of best practices. What are the things that you see people do wrong? Subtitles, of course, was one, putting them in the wrong place. But, what are the things that you're like, oh, these are the things I clean up immediately?
The one thing that irritates me most, and I'm guilty of doing this, is there's actually two things. One is putting the links in the copy of the post. Sometimes you do it and it's just, you're moving super fast and you got to get it scheduled.
Yeah.
So you're cross-posting, because I've been guilty of this, but I always try to go back and edit and make sure that I put it somewhere people can actually get to it. That's really frustrating.
Agreed.
And that's also 100% agreed on. Well, no, I want to say 100%, but mostly agreed upon by a lot of the social media managers that I follow. And then the other thing is your thumbnails for your reels. Also guilty. We're not all perfect, but if you can shape those things up and put them in frame, it looks so much better. And some people, I think you got to move quick. So sometimes people forget to do it, but also utilizing the feature where you can take the reels off of your main feed will help you a lot.
Okay. Why is that?
Because you don't have to worry about the thumbnail so much.
Yeah, there you go.
At least not on the feed. Like you still have to worry about the thumbnail that pops up on your reels feed, but if you're not really in need of anything going on the feed, that rhymed. If you're not in need of if it doesn't need to go on the feed, then I would just suggest taking it off the main feed and just leaving it on the Reels feed. It'll still populate and pop up where it needs to. So
Yeah, absolutely. So paid, when should people be doing paid social media? I mean, like, any opinions on that, or should this be a whole separate episode?
honestly, that would be I think it might need to be a whole separate episode just because I'm more in tune with the organic side of things. I don't really see a problem with doing paid too early or too, I guess, what would be considered on time. Because a lot of paid is going to bring you more followers and a lot more engagement too. So like, I'm all for, like, if somebody says like, first thing you want to do is like a boost or like a paid campaign, I'm like, oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you have something there. Now, if you don't have anything on Instagram, don't bother doing paid. That makes no sense.
Agreed.
But if you have a little bit there and you just maybe haven't been active and you have a really solid campaign or a solid post, go ahead and do some paid. That's just the way I think about it. It's just like adding bacon on a burger.
Yeah, if you've got the budget. So the great thing about Instagram is there's some very effective targeting parameters that you can utilize. So you have control over reaching the people that you specifically want to reach. The thing that you need to remember, two things really, is there's different outcomes of paid campaigns. So there can be a follower campaign where your goal is to grow your follower base so that you stay top of mind with them. But to Samaria's point, you've really got to make sure that you've got quality organic content that makes them want to remain a follower and that starts building long-term engagement and community. Then there are lead generation campaigns, and they are very different. And then there are also boosted campaigns where it's around a certain piece of content and you simply want to get it out to the masses. So really making sure that your goals around the campaigns, that you are clear and that you're understanding what return on investment that you want to have. And then social media paid campaigns, they're disruptive. Now, it's not quite the word that I want to use, but they're not searching for you. So you have to remember that if they're in their scroll mode, is your campaign interesting enough, provocative enough, and curiosity, beautiful, whatever it is, to make them stop and be like, huh, and take action. So the user experience of a social media campaign is so critical. And this is not one that you can be lazy about. And you've really got to think about the best practices about what really does get people's attention and how to make sure that when they pay you in their attention, that you are then delivering value that makes them want to engage with you long-term and really supports your brand. So yeah, I think maybe we'll pull Ramsey in at some point in time and do a paid, but I'm with you. I mean, I think oftentimes it's an overlooked component. And if you're building a really healthy ecosystem and you know your personas are on there, it can really be a great addition, whether it's lead generation or whether it's brand reach and getting your name out there. I think it's a great one.
Yeah, I definitely think I think I like paid a lot because it helps people feel more seen.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously organic is organic. And if you don't have a whole lot of followers, you're not really, sometimes your reach can be a little bit lower. Now you can do a lot with organic. I'm not saying you can't do anything with organic, but like paid it helps put you in front of the people that you really want to be in front of. So I do appreciate a good paid campaign.
Yeah.
Especially because I like to see the people that come in from those. A lot of those people will start to engage, and like then it helps build that ecosystem for organic. So once everything is like working together perfectly, it's a great thing. So,
and if you can have a high level of consistent, great organic with paid, it does keep you top of mind. And especially if you've got worthy content, people do want to see you in their feed. They followed you on purpose. And so, you're not interrupting them in a negative way, as long as you're really thinking, how do I add to this community? How do I really do some great content that people enjoy? And again, being good is good for business. You know what I mean? It's encouraging to see that and to see brands doing that and showcasing their people and, being a part of something bigger than just what they're selling.
Yeah.
All right. Any final tips before we wrap?
I think what I always say at the end of these is make sure when you're on social, you're having fun. I know that a lot of people, again, take it really seriously because it is the forward-facing part of your brand, but you also have to remember that like social is social for a reason. So you do have to have fun, and you have to be creative and think outside the box, and don't be afraid to have to take anything down.
Yeah.
it'll be there, but it won't be there anymore. So it's okay.
Agreed. And she's bringing up something so important here. The worst thing you can do on Instagram is not post enough. So if you are freaking out over whether to write the word and or use an ampersand, or did I use this exact phrasing, versus really being audience first, others centered, and putting out great content there that serves them and showcases the truth of your brand, you want to fail forward. Like she said, I mean, it's a very simple thing to take down a post. If for some reason, you're rethinking it or you want to edit it, that's fine, but do not use the overzealous perfection to just freeze you and to not be able to make any progress with your community. So Maria, thank you so much for hopping on. If your personas are on Instagram, you should be too. So hopefully these tips will help get you going. We would love to hear your individual comments and questions. So please post them here, or feel free to reach out to us on themarketingblender.com or on either one of our personal feeds. Thank you guys so much. Make sure to engage, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share, invite your friends, do all the things, be social. Onward and upward, you guys.